from the college by the lake, meeting the personalities and discussing the issues that affect all of Coeur d'Alene and the Inland Northwest. We are the North Idaho College Public Forum. And now here's your moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart.
Today we're very pleased to have three guests on our program. We're going to discuss a very serious and important topic. Many of you viewers have heard over the years about new legislation called Consumer Protection Acts in the state of Idaho and our neighboring states and even in Canada. Many residents have experienced what we call consumer fraud, and particularly senior citizens have been targeted for many types of fraud. And so today on the program, although the whole area of consumer protection is important, we're going to zero in on senior citizens and how to protect that community against that fraud. In order to carry out that task, I'm very pleased to welcome to the program three guests today. First, to my far right is Mr. Joe Skillens, who is the Ombudsman for the Elderly Area Agency on Aging. Joe, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
And next to him is Janice Steeding, who is the Project Director of the North Idaho Community Action Retired Senior Volunteer Program. And Janice, we're very pleased to have you on the program. I want to personally thank you for assisting me in getting this program together. And our third guest is Harold Stanley, who is the Senior Peer Counselor with a number of programs, and we're very happy to have Harold with us also.
Thank you.
Janice, if I may, I would like to start with you. I know that at a meeting that I attended, I got the idea to have this program and consulted with you. I know in this program we're about to talk about, you work closely with the Attorney General of the state of Idaho and the Consumer Protection Agency within that organization. I guess I'd like to back up even before we get into the specifics of this particular kind of program. And would you tell us a little bit about the whole issue of consumer protection and the role that agencies such as yours should have in assisting citizens in this whole process?
Okay. Basically what you said was that the senior citizens are the target group for fraud. We have 16% of the population are elderly, and yet they are 30% of the fraud victims.
Is that now in a particular locality, like all over the country, or is that in North Idaho?
We're talking North Idaho right now. And they're also 60% of medical quackery fraud. An agency such as ours is designed to utilize volunteers, my program specifically does, to work with other seniors in various capacities, whether it's medical driving, at the senior centers. And this is just a new program that we're starting in response to the problem of consumer fraud among the elderly.
But in order for you to even carry out this program, you've got other staff people here today that assist you in that process, or with different agencies that are involved. That would not be possible, however, if we had not some years ago, though, both at the federal level and state level, particularly at the state level, if we had not gotten legislation that described certain kinds of business activity as fraud. And so when the investigations take place or you're attempting to assist someone, there is a mechanism in place that, one, the law has been violated, and two, there is a way to prosecute. Is that not correct?
Right. The Attorney General represents the people of Idaho. And if you have a complaint against a business, you need to either contact the Attorney General's office, or if you're a senior and want to talk to someone locally, that is when you would call our 800 toll-free number and talk to another senior about your problem, who will take the information down on a complaint form. And then if, let's say that senior doesn't really want to prosecute, but they want their complaint known, that peer counselor could contact the Attorney General's office and fill out their complaint form so that it is on file with his office. Because if somebody else should call down there to Boise and there's no record of this company doing something, they're going to say that that company is okay and do business with them. So what we need to do is to get the word out and to get it documented.
Isn't there another advantage here too, the fact that you get the information even though the person may not want to pursue it legally that was the victim? When you hear about this, oftentimes through the media, you also get word out that there is a certain scam that's in operation in North Idaho or in the state of Washington, wherever it may be. And so by even informing people through, for example, newspapers and television, it may prevent a lot of people from becoming victims.
Right, and what we're going to try to do is to get the word out not just to the newspapers, but also to all of the senior centers in our 5 counties. and to the various sheriff's departments so that they're aware of it too, so that if they get calls, they know beforehand, and also to the prosecuting attorney general, or the prosecuting attorney in each county that is, of course, a representative of the attorney general.
As we're delving into exactly what you're doing, I know that the legislation's been there a good long time. In fact, in some cases in Idaho, it was passed in the early 1970s. But what you're doing with the hotline is something new. And if I'm not mistaken, that some of the areas that you got involved in, I call this a pilot project, is something kind of new. I mean, there's not even that many places in the United States that are doing it. So I'd like to ask you at this time, Janice, to tell us about what you mean by the Senior Citizens Hotline, how it came about, and
Okay.
what could be borrowed by other communities or other states in what you're doing.
Okay, about a year and a half ago, I was watching 48 Hours because they had a special on senior citizens. It wasn't just fraud, it was neglect and abuse. And on that show, they had a unit in the state of Illinois where they were using senior volunteers at the sheriff's department to handle these types of phone calls, because they found out that senior citizens are extremely reluctant to come forth with these problems. They're embarrassed, or they're just too timid or intimidated by the system. And so they found out that by using volunteers of that age group, that they were getting a really good response from seniors in Illinois. And to my knowledge, at this point, that is the only program in the nation besides this one that is attempting to do this. And one of the services of our program is that they can not only just talk to a volunteer, that volunteer can also take them to the prosecuting attorney's office if they don't really want to go by themselves. They can walk through all the paperwork with them, they can go to court with them, anything that they need a service for.
But so your volunteers really become an ally of the victim and
Right.
can help them through that whole process.
And advocate for that victim.
I would tell our viewers in a few minutes we will give that 800 number, so that particularly those in North Idaho would like to have it, if they had a pen and a piece of paper, they could take that down. But I would like to move over to Joe, because the word ombudsman always is intriguing to me, because that's something that's very valuable, and in Scandinavian countries I know they use that really right in the official capacity of government. Not only, Joe, tell me what it means to you and the work that you do, but how it also relates to what Janice is talking about concerning protecting seniors from this kind of fraud.
Okay, you're right about the ombudsman. It's often a definition that's confusing, and usually when I explain what I do, I explain that I'm the ombudsman, which is synonymous with an advocate. Mm-hmm. I'm an advocate for the elderly. And what I do is generally visit all of the nursing homes and shelter homes up in the 5 northern counties, talk with the residents there if they're having any problems or concerns about their care or treatment or any other concerns, then I'll advocate on their behalf. Additionally, I'll field complaints or concerns from individuals out in the community, age 60 or over, who have complaints about various problems such as Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. In many of these calls that I get from in the community from seniors, in my job I've received a lot of calls about consumer complaints, rip-offs, frauds, scams, and they would call my office and ask for assistance in getting their money back or having the salesperson comply with what they agreed to deliver to them. And so I would advocate on behalf of the senior to try to make that happen. I've been getting a lot of calls on that, and it was there's a lot of problems out there, and it has come to my attention. It just so happened that I was looking for some way to be able to address the concerns of the seniors in a more widespread basis than one-on-one calls that I would receive. And it just so happened that Janice and I connected where she was interested in doing something like the fraud hotline, the Senior Sentinel, and I was interested also in some form of contacting seniors in the whole area. So we got together, and really was spearheaded by Janice with a lot of work from the RSVP program, but we kind of got our resources together to establish this fraud hotline. So both of us, since we both deal with the concerns of the seniors in the 5 northern counties, we could combine our resources to attack this particular problem.
I know, Harold, that you are very, very involved in this program. Your title is a senior peer counselor, and so you have very close contact with a number of seniors who have experienced this fraud. I have a several-part question for you. First of all, tell us some of your concerns about fraud, and in relation to that, why have senior citizens become such a high percentage of the victimization of fraud itself?
It wasn't too long ago that I learned that fraud and scams is up 25% this year over last year. And the numbers involved include almost $20 million of lost monies.
This is in North Idaho alone?
This is in Idaho. But what really impacted me was the fact that I didn't know what was being done in the public forum to alert the bad guys to stay out of our community, as well as alert some of my associates and other fellow seniors. I wanted to protect them as well. So I started to look into this, and I found that if I joined the team that Janice had set up, I have a title, Senior Sentinel, and really I'm a one-on-one with an individual, male or female, that has experienced what may be a consumer fraud complaint, and I work with that person and document that case. In turn, if they wish to pass that on to the Attorney General, I see to it that that information is passed on so we can nail these bad guys before they really get carried away.
So if it's the information, if they're willing to send it on, it goes to the Attorney General of Idaho, but then it also has to be routed from the Attorney General to that county's prosecuting attorney, is that correct?
I believe so.
Yes. And so the actual prosecution would take place by, I would assume, the county prosecutor. Is that correct, Janice?
That depends. They can also do, if they get a lot of complaints about a certain company, and it has to involve the amount of, let's say, money that was taken, sure, or the amount of promises that weren't kept, and the total number of people that are calling in and complaining, then they will handle it at the state level and try to prosecute. They don't always prosecute. Sometimes they can work out an agreement with that company, mm-hmm, to make some sort of restitution to the victims.
Mm-hmm. But I noticed in some of the literature that I was reading that you gave me that if it does go to prosecution, an individual's often, I would assume, worried that particularly if it went off into the area of civil action and might not be a prosecution, you can go into court and can you get your money back, but the court cost or attorney's fees would maybe eat up even, the $2,000 or $3,000, whatever, that you had been damaged. Isn't there a mechanism under the law where they guarantee that attorney's fees will be paid and so forth? And
yes, it is. And I might say also that you're probably only going to get 10 cents on the dollar back from what you've invested in that scheme.
Even after all the litigation?
Right. Mm-hmm. And it's a very, very small number of cases that actually are prosecuted, and it takes up to an average of 2 years to go through the courts. So, it's not very encouraging for people to come forward, to try to get something done. But on the other hand, you really do need to do this because, like I said, if somebody else calls down there and there's no record of it, then they'll just assume that the business is fine, and they'll go ahead and deal with them.
Harold, since you work on this on a very personal basis, I know that our viewers would be very interested in if you take us through kind of a list of types of fraud that have been directed at senior citizens. If you would just kind of identify some of the kinds of things that they've been taken for money and kind of the sales pitch, whatever, that was used to try to and was successful in getting their money.
Seniors seem to be targeted for a couple of reasons. And generally speaking, the majority of scams that hit seniors pertain to home improvement. Typically, the offer will be something like, I just happen to be in your neighborhood and I have some paint left over. And you could do me a favor if you let me paint your house. And I need nothing more than $200 to get started on this. And I'll make you an offer that is just tremendous. And so the bait has been set in place for that person to say to that senior, this is home improvement. And naturally, people are interested in maintaining their household. So,
and I assume that what they say to them is that they must have the money before they do the work.
Oh, that's right. They just a little short on money, so they'd like a little money up front to get started. And this is not limited to paint. This could be roofing, new shingles. This could be siding. And I think the reason seniors are targets is that I believe many seniors tend to trust people. They want to believe what they hear. And so if a very confident voice comes on the telephone, and 75% of all scams begin on the telephone, and the voice said, "Congratulations, you are a winner. You have just won $10,000, a brand new car, and a trip to Hawaii." At that point, you have been, if greed is there in any level, you're going to grab that opportunity, and you've been caught in a scam.
May I ask you another question, Harold? Also, I understand what you're saying is very valid, but also most senior citizens are on a very fixed income.
Yes.
And so they don't have as much money to do upkeeps on the home and all, and I would assume they might let it go a little longer. And then also when they hear of a deal that would be so much cheaper, they'd be more enticed than if they had a higher income. Would that be part of the problem also?
That is indeed. There's a little element of greed that takes place, but it's based in part on this business of a fixed income. Naturally, once you've made a commitment to an unknown, whether or not it's on the phone or whether or not it's at the door, the best thing for a senior or any citizen to do is that if they haven't initiated that call or that request for that caller, is simply to say no thank you and hang up.
In a minute we're going to get into some of the ways to prevent fraud, but I also want to identify a few more areas. You've indicated that the very large majority are about home improvements. Are there other kind of frauds that senior citizens also experience?
Yes. Janice made an earlier reference to medical practices, and I think she may be able to give you some further examples.
Thank you.
Well, one of the reasons is that, of course, at that age, they have more diseases than the general population. And so they're always looking for a cure. And so, you know, these ads for miraculous cures for arthritis or cancer, things that haven't been proven to be treatable, they become victimized by that because they're afraid and they're in pain and they want something to alleviate it.
Now, the fraudulent organization or group that's doing this, do they indicate to them that they have these products and they can just deliver them to their home or mail them? And how do they get around the fact that they tell the senior citizen that it's not through physicians or it's not through local pharmacies? In other words, how do they peddle?
Okay, they peddle it by using keywords like secret formula, you know, miraculous cures. And people, when they get desperate, they're going to fall for it. And a lot of it is just advertising in magazines. But as Harold was saying, 75% of all scams are perpetrated by the telephone. That's where they begin. And I would say that if that's the one thing that a person should be careful of, is a telephone call. A call that you do not initiate, that comes to you uninvited into your home. That's what you really need to be careful of.
But if it's magazine advertising and a senior sends the money and doesn't get the product and so forth, then other kinds of legislation comes into play. Then when the mails are used for that kind of fraud, additional laws have been violated. Isn't that correct?
Well, if they're saying, it depends on how the ad's worded. Okay. If they're saying it's going to cure arthritis, then the postal inspector is brought in on that. And so they would need to call the postal inspector in their area for that.
Are there any other kind of frauds that you'd like to identify other than like the maintenance of homes and the medical? Are there some others that are very obvious?
Another big one is investments. And the reason for that, as we were saying, is that they are on a fixed income and they're looking for ways to increase that income. And so if somebody calls them or approaches them with, you know, a high yield bond or stocks or things like that, you know, oil wells, they're going to go for it because their money is tight. And so they become victims of that. Another scam was...
Yeah, if I could, 900 numbers are ones to be on the lookout for if you receive a letter or a postcard indicating that you have won one of several fantastic prizes, a brand new Cadillac, $10,000, or a trip to Hawaii or whatever. They will have on that postcard to contact this 900 number for information on how to collect this prize. The 900 number can run like $2 a minute upward to $20 a minute. So they get this individual to call about the prize, and there's no prize. But they keep them on the line to run up their phone bill, and basically they're getting the money just from this 900 call.
Or the organization doing this actually makes a profit on the 900
Exactly.
call itself if they don't sell any kind of product at all.
Exactly. It's
Also, viewers should also be aware that if it's an 800 number, that you don't get charged, but if it's a 900 number, you do get charged.
you pay for that telephone call, and it could be, I mean, the prices fluctuate, and it could be as high as $20 per minute.
Aren't some of those also set up to where in real fine print, when they publish it, that the first minute or first 2 minutes is $1 or 50 cents, and then all at once it jumps to much higher?
Yes, that can happen. Another kind of offshoot with that postcard or letter that you receive about these valuable prizes that you've won, one of them that you've won, is that in order for them to deliver it to you, you should send them $500 or $700 for the delivery shipping cost. And we've had scams like that come to our attention, where an individual, in order to receive the car that they won, would send $700 for the shipping cost, and that's it. They've just lost $700 and will never receive a car. So that's another scam that's been going around. There's just, it seems like there's a new scam every week.
The list is endless.
Exactly, and it's hard. I mean, you could enumerate these scams, and that's good, but I think there has to be like this general idea that they follow a certain pattern, and the consumer, especially the elderly, should be aware of, of certain things.
I want to get into that, but before I do, I might forget. I have a tendency to do that sometimes, and we promised the 800 number. So at this time, for those in North Idaho that you're serving, I will give that number. It's 1-800-642-9099. And I know, Janice, you have some other numbers too. They could call, and is this? I think this is one of your office numbers. This would not be, that 800 number is a toll-free number, but for those who wanted to talk with you more directly, I believe it's area code 208. Is it 667?
No, it's the 664 number.
It's okay. Would you give that area code 208?
664-3114.
Okay, and they could get directly to your office with that number, but
Right.
that of course, if it's long distance, they'd have to pay for that. But there's an 800 toll-free number for those in the North Idaho area. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Let's go a little bit more into what you're talking about concerning, these so many different kinds of scams. What came to my mind as you were listing those over, all of you, is that, if I might summarize or generalize, they're not local businesses that have been established and that you go to their business and they're there serving the citizenry. And they're not organizations that belong to the local, like Chamber of Commerce. They're either away where they're advertising through magazines and these 900 numbers, or they're coming through and using telephones, and we're just coming through, like you said, Harold. In other words, they're not organizations and groups that are established in the community in most cases, are they?
Not in most cases, but there are scams that are done by individuals in the community, unfortunately, like house painters, perhaps, who live in the area, have scams about, of visiting elderly individuals and convincing them to hire them to paint their house and take the money and never paint the house. And these are local individuals. We had an incident not too long ago about a hearing aid salesman that was from the area who would somehow got a list of senior citizens and would contact these senior citizens or put an advertisement in the paper saying that he would give free hearing tests. And they would come to where the designated place to get a free hearing test, and apparently they all would need a hearing aid. So he would take the order, take the money, and then never deliver the hearing aid. We were fortunate to assist one individual, but there was a number of individuals involved in filing a complaint with the Attorney General's office, and they pursued it very vigorously. And he was a licensed hearing aid salesperson and had his license revoked and got back the money that he had taken from several senior citizens.
I know one thing that Attorney General Larry Eckelhawk does, who is the Attorney General of Idaho, that he travels around the state and informs people of this kind of service that's available in his Office of Consumer Protection. And also he does a lot of advertising, and he and his staff, so that's available. But we'd be remiss if we finished this program without talking about how to protect yourself, and that's a real vital part of this program. Janice, let's start with you on this. Just if we can have a list for particularly senior citizens, what to do so this doesn't happen to you, that you do not become a victim.
Well, I think the most important thing for them to do is to ask a lot of questions. They need to ask the salesperson their name, their company's name, their address. If it's somebody over the telephone, they need to ask them if they can be sent information first before they make a decision. They need to be aware that if they purchase a Medigap insurance policy or a long-term nursing home care policy, that they have 30 days, kind of a look-see thing before they have to sign that. If it's a door-to-door person, they have 3 days for a cooling off period that they can cancel out that
I've got to say that we have a really short amount of time, and I think it's important to also say that in all these cases where it's suspicious, shouldn't they also contact, like in a case that's your number and office, or shouldn't they call the Better Business Bureau? Shouldn't they go somewhere to a very well-established, legitimate organization to verify this organization or these individuals?
Well, they should, but a lot of them just won't, and that's one of the reasons why this was created, is maybe to assist people with doing this, because like I said, a lot of them are just afraid.
We're about out of time. Joe, do you have anything else that you could add?
Just be very aware of unsolicited phone calls, and by all means check the sources by the Better Business Bureau or the AG's office or our
And be very
phone number.
cautious of business by phone.
Exactly, very cautious.
As I've gotten the signal, we must conclude our program. I want to thank all three of you for being here. I know you serve the public well by cautioning with these kind of scams and frauds that do exist. Ladies and gentlemen, I do believe that you would agree that our program has been productive for you, and we hope it does protect our consumers. We'd like to invite you to be with us again next week at this same time, when we will discuss what we believe to be an important subject. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
North Idaho College Public Forum is videotaped live by Telemedia Services on the campus of North Idaho College for viewing at this more appropriate time. We invite you to catch the North Idaho College Public Forum the same time next week on this television station.